says Ubini already existed. So which is it? Was Ubini a product of Oranmiyan's anger, or was Ubini a sibling from the start? You see how contradictory and confused this is, right? This is why you don't build history. You don't build serious history on emotion, ego, and myth that change every time the wind blows. Let me say this with my full chest. We never needed Yoruba that didn't exist until the 19th century to name us. The name Benin may be a colonial exonym. Yes, we have never denied that. But so is Yoruba. And unlike you, we are not confused about our real identity. We have no identity crisis whatsoever. We are Edo. We speak Edo. When we speak among ourselves, we ask, are you Edo? Oviedo here. Oviedo here. Do you speak Edo? Uzedo. Ugwazedo. Never are you Bini, like Ovie Binu here. How? Seriously? Or do you speak Bini? Ugwaze Bini? Uze Bini? Never. In fact, Bini doesn't even exist in our indigenous vocabulary. The word Bini is not even in Edo language.
We're going to deal with three words: Ubini, Igodomigodo, and Edo. Alright? The first one we have to deal with is Ubini. Now, there is a concept out there. They said the first word that was used is that it was the Yoruba that gave us the word Benin. That the word Benin it's a word that originated from Ile Ibinu. Alright? That's what they said. But here, I want to prove that that's not true. Alright? That Benin, B-E-N-I-N, never came from Ile Ibinu. Ubini as a word never came from Ile Ibinu. It doesn't even, Ile Ibinu, Ubini, it doesn't even correlate. Ubini is an old ancient Benin word. Old ancient Ogiso word. It has been there even before the establishing of the Ogiso dynasty. I'll prove so. And I will prove who named us Ubini.
Thanks for clicking on this channel. Please subscribe to FO's blog history and click on the notification button so that whenever we upload a new video you will be notified. Did the name Benin derive from Ile Ibinu, a name they claim Oranmiyan gave Igodomigodo? Where did the name Benin originate from? Mr. Izadawa and Mr. Melanated Ovienzawoba are going to discuss the origin of the name Benin, as well as debunk the lies of the Ifa-centric Yorubas that said Oranmiyan called the land of Igodomigodo, Ile Ibinu, which later metamorphosed into Benin. Mr. Melanated Ovienzawoba asked a question: did Oranmiyan name Igodomigodo, Ile Ibinu, and answered no. Before we watch the video of Melanated Ovienzawoba, this is our finding about the origin of the name Benin. The capital city of Edo race only became known as Edo during the reign of El Wahid the Great, 1440 to 1473. He renamed it after a faithful servant called Edo who saved his life. Indeed, the word Edo remains a bona fide name still in use today among many, but not all, of the Edoid clans. Since Edo, Benin City, only became known as Edo in El Wahid's time, what was it called before then? During the era of the first Ogiso Ngodo, 601 AD, it was called Igodomigodo, the ancient name for the Benin Kingdom. The land of Benin was previously known as Ubini and later known as Igodomigodo. Interestingly, it continued to be called Ubini by a segment of the population as late as the reign of Olua, 1475 to 1480, because his son, Ginawa, who founded the Itsekiri kingdom, perpetuated it as the name of the Benin Kingdom among the Itsekiri. The Itsekiri were the ones who told the Portuguese that the land of the people of Igodomigodo was called Ubini, but the Portuguese corrupted it to Benin. Please listen to Melanated Ovienzawoba because he gave an explicit explanation to debunk Ifa-centric lies.
Did Oranmiyan rename Igodomigodo to Ile Ibinu? No. it's absolute bullshit. A myth regurgitated by people who would rather lick the dust off colonial era propaganda than crack open a history book. So to the keyboard warriors who've been camping under Benin videos since 1804, crying about Ife and chasing the Oba family trees like it's a Netflix series, this video will surgically dismantle every lie you have been spoon-fed. So sit down. This video is your intervention. But first, let's address a basic but apparently underrated skill: reading comprehension. Because these days it seems the latest trend in historical revisionism is citing books you have clearly never read and praying to the gods of ignorance that nobody notices. You see, you love to throw book titles around and hope people don't read them, because your entire argument relies on the classic trifecta of intellectual fraud: cherry picking, quote mining, and contextomy, where you read an entire library, tear out just 2 sentences that vaguely nod at your delusion and scream, "See, the book agrees with me," conveniently ignoring the 300 pages that call you a liar. No wonder you are all over social media, barking and foaming at the mouth with mangled excerpts you have never read past the footnotes. Listen, scholarship isn't a buffet where you snatch the jollof rice and pretend the bitter leaf soup doesn't exist. No, in fact, this is worse. It's like plucking 1 grain of pepper from a full pot of soup, then screaming, "This proves the soup is spicy," while ignoring the gallons of tasteless broth drowning it. And let me make something clear moving forward. I do not need to provide new evidence to debunk your historical gymnastics. You have already done the work for me. Every source you quote, every screenshot you rate post, every gotcha except you frantically copy paste, they all got your argument in broad daylight. Because when you strip away the sentiment and actually read those books, those posts, those excerpts, those screenshots, these texts don't defend your dogma. They expose it, they torch it. But let's hold that in abeyance while I offer you a crash course in reading comprehension. We are expected to believe this fairy tale that Oranmiyan came to Igodomigodo, a land he knew nothing about, couldn't speak the language, couldn't rule, and because of his frustration, he got angry and renamed the place Ubini or Ile Ibinu, the land of anger, in his so-called Yoruba tongue, or so they say. So from there, we are told Europeans misunderstood this emotional outburst and mangled it into Beni, and finally Benin. And just like that, no scrutiny, no logic. Millions have swallowed this simply because someone draped it in the cloak of tradition, oral tradition. But in a logical context, that's like a man walking into a job interview, failing the test, storming out in frustration, and somehow getting credit for founding the company or renaming it. Pathetic, right? The only thing more fictional than this story, this fairy tale, is Wakanda. And at least Marvel admits Wakanda is made up. That's the difference. So can you see the absurdity in such lazy and twisted reasoning? Now, to spoon feed this wisdom to his flock of alamajiris, this court jester, with all the scholarly rigor of a roadside palm wine lecturer, proceeds to break down which of his so-called Yoruba dialects the legendary Oranmiyan supposedly spoke. So, ladies and gentlemen, behold his ex-revelation, delivered with the confidence of a man who's never once doubted his own genius. How convenient. One can only marvel at the linguistic parkour required to spin a single word into an entire historical thesis. Truly, the internet's greatest minds are at work. But honestly, one struggles to decide what is more impressive in his mumbo jumbo: his commitment to cosplaying as a linguist, or the sheer audacity of trying to pawn off this linguistic LARPing as actual scholarship. This isn't research. It's mythological ventriloquism, a clumsy art of throwing words into history's mouth, only for them to tumble out like loose teeth, full of holes and laughably unconvincing.
After ruling the Edo people for some years, Oranmiyan later decided that it was better if Edo was ruled by an Edo person and not him who was a foreigner. So Oranmiyan and the Edo elders therefore installed a young son born to Oranmiyan by one of his Edo wives as king of the Edo people.
Let's cut through the noise. That Oranmiyan Ubini fairy tale isn't history. It's a hoax, a myth, a big fat historical bongo dressed up as scholarship. And no, shouting Oranmiyan all the time like it's some magical incantation won't suddenly make up for your lack of scholarship. That's not how history works. It's how delusion metastasizes. However, today is not for feel-good folktales or ethnic fantasy. We are not here, I'm not here for emotional fables. Today, we are dissecting this line by line, logic by logic, and most painfully for you, using your own sources to bury your nonsense once and for all. Let's begin with their own Yoruba tradition. Yoruba myth already acknowledged a place called Ibini before this Oranmiyan fairy tale. Like I said, let's use their own sources, right? Now, in Richard Burton's 1863 book, Abeokuta and the Cameroon Mountains, which has been frequently referenced by these eccentric ethno-mythologists and tribal propagandists, page 229 and 230 says clearly, a third tradition makes Iketu, Egba, Ijebu, Ife, Ibini, and Yoruba 6 brothers by one mother. Did you catch that? Ibini, not Ubinu. Ibini. First of all, the book presents not one but multiple contradictory origin myths about the Yoruba. One version claims the Yoruba originated as an offshoot of Nupe. Another version says they came from a group of 16 people who journeyed through water with a hen, a palm nut, and a piece of cloth. Then another version, and this is the one they really don't want you to notice, right? This version says Iketu, Egba, Ijebu, Ife, Ibini, and Yoruba 6 brothers by one mother. which means the place we now call Benin was already known, already named before Oranmiyan supposedly arrived. So how do you rename a place your people already said existed? How do you name your elder brother? What kind of historical amnesia is that? You cannot discover what your own myth says existed before you. That's like claiming you discovered your elder brother and then gave him a name. It doesn't work like that. How does a place go from being a known sibling in your tradition to something you personally renamed out of annoyance? So how does Oranmiyan get to rename Ubini as Ubinu when Yoruba traditions already refers to Ubini as part of their own ancestral narrative? This is what happens when people don't read their own sources, or when they are disingenuous, of course, when they lack integrity. This is what happens. And this exposes the whole Oranmiyan named Benin narrative as a retroactive invention designed to legitimize political ties after the fact. Now let's take another look at this gem from this so-called professor. Permit me to apply their own smelly logic, if that incoherence can even be called logic. Benin are all European or colonial identities bestowed on the Edos. Their original identity as bestowed on them by the Yoruba was Ubini from Ibinu, anger. Stop right there. So let's assume for a second that my logic is smelly. But this right here is what I'll call pseudo-etymology on crack. You see, he's trying to sound smart by referencing dialect zones like CY, SEY, NEY. But none of that changes the fact that the Yoruba myth already mentioned Ubini. That destroys his entire argument. You see this post, that tweet, much like his Ahmed Baba-esque Yoruba and Uruba wordplay, is a masterclass in linguistic grift. The kind where historical rigor goes to die and confirmation bias gets a PhD. A classic example of the art of linguistic fraud. He even claimed Yoruba bestowed Ubinu on the Edos as if we are some toddler tribe waiting for naming rights from our angry neighbors. How preposterous. Dang. So, according to his pseudo-etymology, Yoruba gave Edos the name Ubinu, which is Central Yoruba, Southeast Yoruba, and Northeast Yoruba dialects for anger, right? And eventually, Ubinu became Benin, a colonial name, right? But the same Yoruba tradition from the same sources they reference says Ubini already existed. So which is it? Was Ubinu a product of Oranmiyan's anger, or was Ubini a sibling from the start? You see how contradictory and confused this is, right? This is why you don't build history. You don't build serious history on emotion, ego, and myth that change every time the wind blows. Let me say this with my full chest. We never needed Yoruba that didn't exist until the 19th century to name us. The name Benin may be a colonial exonym. Yes, we have never denied that. But so is Yoruba. And unlike you, we are not confused about our real identity. We have no identity crisis whatsoever. We are Edo. We speak Edo. When we speak among ourselves, we ask, are you Edo? Oviedo here. Do you speak Edo? Uzedo, Ugwazedo. Never are you Bini, like Ovie Binuhi. How? Seriously? Or do you speak Bini? Ugwaze Bini, Uze Bini? Never. In fact, Bini doesn't even exist in our indigenous vocabulary. The word Bini is not even in Edo language. Bini is not an endonym, and we have never refuted that. But the difference is, we know it's an exonym. You don't even know yours is. You keep changing the origin story every Saturday and still act like it's divine truth. Either bring one consistent claim and defend it with evidence, or just kindly sit this one out, or have a family meeting and decide which one. You know what's amazing? The way eccentric fanatics can take any non-Yoruba word, twist it, and claim it's dialectical deflection. So by your logic, Timbuktu must be from Timbaku, the Yoruba word for we almost died. And Mozambique came definitely from Mozambique, Yoruba word for I dodged dead, right? It's not etymology, it's linguistic madness. So no, we are not trying to reclaim Benin as some original name. We are rejecting the lies that it came from a Yoruba man with anger issues.
Where did the name Benin originate from? That is the question Mr. Izadawa is going to answer in this video. The Edo people, sometimes referred to as the Benin people, are an Edo-speaking ethnic group. They are speakers of the Edo language and are the descendants of the founder of the Benin race, Pa Idu. They are closely related to other southern Nigerian tribes such as the Ezin, the Itsako, the Inca, the Itsekiri, the Nsoko, and the Yoruba. The name Benin is a Portuguese corrupted word, Ubini, which had been used before the reign of Oba El Wahe I in 1440. Ubini, an Edo word meaning livable, was used by Pa Idu, the progenitor of the Edo people, to describe the area found as a livable location during their sojourn from the river Niger area, in present-day Kogi state, after the Great Flood. Ubini was later corrupted to Benin by the Portuguese around 1485 when the Portuguese began trade relations with Oba El Wahe I, giving them coral beads. Most ethnic groups in the South-South trace their history back to the historical city of Benin. Examples of such groups include Afamai, the Ezin people, and the Akoko Edo people situated on Edo State's northern borders, as well as different ethnic groups from Delta states such as the Yoruba, the Inca, the Hakwani, the Nsoko, the Itsekiri, etc. Also in Rivers State, many ethnic groups trace their origin to the Benin Kingdom. Please sit down and watch as Mr. Izadawa explains further.
We're going to deal with three words: Ubini, Igodomigodo, and Edo. Alright? The first one we have to deal with is Ubini. Now, there is a concept out there. They said the first word that was used is that it was the Yoruba that gave us the word Benin. That the word Benin it's a word that originated from Ile Ibinu. Alright? That's what they said. But here, I want to prove that that's not true. Alright? That Benin, B-E-N-I-N, never came from Ile Ibinu. Ubini as a word never came from Ile Ibinu. It doesn't even, Ile Ibinu, Ubini, it doesn't even correlate. Ubini is an old ancient Benin word. Old ancient Ogiso word. It has been there even before the establishing of the Ogiso dynasty. I'll prove so. And I will prove who named us Ubini. Now the word, and secondly, some said that it is the Portuguese that named us Benin. The Portuguese never named us Benin. I will attempt to answer that concept of that the word Ubini never actually came from Ile Ibinu, and it was not the Portuguese that named us Benin. All right, so I think that's all it's going to be like. Now, in classic works done by, I'm going to give you the reference of where this story I'm going to narrate of the word Ubini is coming from. There are two prominent historians that attempt to answer the origin of the Benin people. The origin. Now, there is a difference. Igayoa attempted where the Benin people came from, but he never spoke about the origin of the Benin people. The prominent historian that talked about the origin of the Benin people is the late Professor Osborne Omoyegie. Late Professor Osborne Omoyegie, who was coincidentally was also a student of Jacob Obadiah. Now, after which Professor Osborne Omoyegie, OSB, popularly called OSB, Omoyegie, passed on. One of his best students, Dr. Umudiag Montaigne, also postulated another book, and where he did a classic works called the Benin Polemics, the Benin Historical Polemics. Now, I think that's the title of the book. The Benin Historical Polemics. While Professor OSB Omoyegie's works was on Great Benin, Volume 1 to Volume 5. Now, the essay for today is Volume 1. We want to talk about the age of Isonoro. It is Volume 1, titled Age of Isonoro by OSB Omoyegie. That's when he made mention of the origin of the Benin people. Now, classically, Professor OSB Omoyegie believed that the Benin people experienced what all the world historians, the world atlas, talked about as post-Adamic cataclysm, the end of the world, the great flooding, the second great flooding. Now, every world historian believed that there were two great flooding. Now, Professor Omoyegie believed that the Benins experienced the two great flooding. Now, he made mention specifically of the second flooding, which the world historians call the post-Adamic cataclysm. And it is there he postulated that at that time of history, the Benins migrated from their original home of around the Bobahil area, present-day Bobahil area, and migrated to a place called Uhe. The Uhe that the Benins migrated to is the present-day Kogi state. So, in one of my videos, I had proved factually that the original Ile Ife that even a Caladera went to is not the present-day Osun state. Alright, in the works of Professor Boba Akun, he had rhetorically asked that in which Ife was the original Oranmiyan kings of the Yoruba. So, now the original Uhe is not at the present day Ile Ife, it's a present day Uhe, Kogi state. Even in the Portuguese archive, they talked about the Oba of Benin paying tribute to a king they called Ogane. Obviously, it's Ogane. And the oldest tradition of the Ife people, the Ikedu tradition, postulated that the original kings of Ife were called Ogane. And Ogane is a Benin word or an Edo word, still being used by the Yorubas. So these are some of the things. So you have to pay close attention for you to be able to grasp, because these things are quite voluminous. I'm trying to find a way of bringing them down, giving a wide scope of explanation to try and channel it into the concept of what I want to explain as Ubini. All right, that's what I want to explain as Ubini. Please, if you want to get, I'm sorry, they said I shouldn't be distracted. In fine, Burns, I'm just going to answer this question because I have a mandate today. But let me just quickly take this. Now, I'll refer you to a book done by Graham Conan. Did an archaeological excavation on Benin. Get a book called the Benin Archaeology. Also, I've forgotten the name of the book, done by Graham Conan. Graham Conan, Conan, did an archaeological excavation. So when you read the book, you discover that there are so many archaeological explanation to that. So I'll just quickly say that. And so let me go back. Now, according to Professor O.S.B. Omerigi, he said that there was a post-Adamic cataclysm, all right, the age of the great flooding. That is what the world historians call the Noah's flood in the Bible. The Noah's flood in the Bible affected the entire world. All right, the Benins traveled to a place called Uhe, where they established a sort of a priesthood. All right, a sort of a priesthood. It wasn't really a king. They were more like a priest kings. All right, and then after the flooding receded, they had to travel back. During the traveling, I'm quoting from O.S.B. Omorige's work on Great Benin Volume 1, The Age of Isono. During the traveling down back to where they had left, there were breakovers. Okay, Paidu, who is believed to be the progenitor of our race, was the one who led the Benin race from moving from the central Benin around the Boba Hill area and moved up north through Odede and Alayede, it's the Aduwawa road, and they got to a place below the Great Waters. The Great Waters in Benin history is called Ohimi, River Ohimi. River Ohimi is not the River Niger. The Benin is called Niger River Ohimi. We have a Benin word for that, Ohimi. OHINMWIN, Edutie, River Niger. So the Portuguese recorded it that there was a king that the Benin kings, there was a priest that the Benin kings was paying tribute to. The king stayed below the Great Waters, and the Portuguese called him Organen, which we know it was Organen. So we're referring the king that place we're referring to is believed to be present-day Kogi State, the one below the Great Waters, River Niger. So they all came. I'm not going to talk about that story today. And they all came as there was a breakover. The Aka broke over to establish Udo. Then the other two sons of a Paidu, Efa and Emehi. All right. So that means you have two prominent families, Lamefa and Lamehi. Emehi's family and the Efa's family. Now, when they were coming, the scepter bearer, the man, the priest, like the priest attendant that was attending to Idu's shrine at Uhe, all right, followed Efa and Emehi, and that man is called Azama. So when you go to Isehiri Oloton's compound, you see a space over there where they'll call you, where they wrote Azama Nuhe, Azama Nuhe. He was the priest attendant. It was like, it's the present position occupied by the Oni. He was like the chief priest of the Idu shrine at Uhe. So it's called Azama Nuhe. Is the scepter bearer. So he followed Efa and Emehi. So when they got to the Benin land, the present day Bobahi area, honored by Yoto. Alright? Now, when Efa and Emehi, obviously Efa and Emehi was not born here. Alright? They was born at present day Kogi, what we call Uhe. So looking at the dense forest with the Ogba River and the two extinct river of Otegele and Omi, all right, the Otegele and Omi, they are extinct now. We have the Oba River flowing through the dense. We're talking about the story more than 5,000, 6,000 years ago. Way longer. Maybe like 2,000-3,000 years before the Ogiso era started. This is the story I'm narrating now. So they looked at the beautiful dense forest of the present place you now call Benin City, and they called it Ubini. Now, Ubini is an ancient Edo word, or that means a place of heavenly pageantry, because they had looked at it, it was beautiful. It looks like the Garden of Eden, the biblical Garden of Eden. For those who are Christians, it looks like the biblical Garden of Eden. So they called it they call it Ubini. All right, the Ubini has a meaning. The meaning of Ubini is a place of heavenly pageantry, like something spectacular, something beautiful, something amazing. All right, something beautiful, something amazing. All right, that was the name that the earliest children of the progenitor of this land named this land, a place of heavenly pageantry. This was word that was exclaimed by Efa and Emehi. All right, now we are all the children of Efa and Emehi today. All right, now the okay, the Urobos traces their ancestry to Aka. All right, Aka went to Oyabudo. All right, so the lines of the Aka is where the Urobos came from, so that's why the Urobos still referred to the Benin people as Aka people. All right, a reminder of who their father was, who the lineage at which they came from, in the children of, as part of the line they came from, in one of the children or one of the sons of Paidu. All right, so it was the Efa and Emehi that named this land Ubini. We're talking about almost 5,000 years ago history before the era. No, Jesus never existed that time. The history of that era, the history before the Ogisoshi. All right, so Ubini, that's when the Efa and the Emehi named this land Ubini. These works, you can get it in Great Benin, written by one of the most prominent Benin historian, Professor O.S.B. Omoyegi. All right, so it was named so that became the name of the land hundreds of years even before Ogiso era came. So, having said that, if you understand the click, I've said that over 2,000 years before the Ogiso era started, this land at one point in history was already called Ubini. All right. Now, it is not wrong for people to now say that the exclamation of Oranmiyan calling these people Ile Ibinu was where Ubini came from. So I've just explained that Ubini as a word that existed thousands of years before the Oranmiyan ever came from Ife. Alright? So Ile Ibinu has nothing correlation in terms of name to do with Benin. It is from that Ubini that the Portuguese in the 15th century could not pronounce. Alright? And they called it Benin. So Benin is a corrupted word, is a corrupted original word called Ubini. So it is wrong also for people to say it was the Portuguese that gave us Benin. No, the Portuguese didn't give us Benin. The Portuguese, obviously because they came through the water, and the earliest people, the people they met through at the waterfront before they got to Benin's were probably the Shekiri, and the Shekiris at every turn of history knew us as Ubinin people. All right, so you know now, just like I'll give you another very good example. Now, for some of us who are acquainted, with Benin City, there is a street called Akpakpava. All right, there's a street called Akpakpava. Now, Akpakpava is not the original word. It's not the original word. Okay, it's not the original word. What was the original word was Papavie. All right, Papavie or Papavie, Papavia. it was a Portuguese word that they named. They were staying in that Apapa area. So before, because the Benin's could not pronounce it properly, we now call it Akpakpava. Alright? So that does not mean that the Benins were the one who gave that word. We only, because we couldn't pronounce it properly, we'll not call it Akpakpava, because it was convenient for us to pronounce it as Akpakpava. So also the Portuguese that came, it was also convenient for them to call it Benin rather than Ubini. So it was not the Portuguese that gave us the word Benin. Portuguese never named us Benin. They only corrupted the original word, which is called Ubini. So Benin is a corrupted version of the original word Ubini. Alright? So, and I have proved that Ubini as a word had existed long even before the Ogiso era. And the people who named us Ubini, people do not really know. There's one point in history that this our land was called Idu land. There's one point in history, this our land was called the land of the Efas, Otoefa. Alright? And there was one point in our history where the land was also called Otubini. Ubini. Now these were words that were used for our people, for our land, long before the establishing of the Ogisoship. It was the coming of the first ruler recognized, I wouldn't call first ruler, it was the coming of the first recognized king of this land that brought the word Igodomigodo. Some say it's I am that I am, or some say that the land of the strong, because Igodo means something strong, the land of the brave. So the Benins named the land after Igodo. There are two schools of thought. You see that the Benins named it after their first recognized king, Igodo, or it was an exclamation that the first king of Benin said, Igodomigodo, I am that I am, something like that. Or some people believe, it's two schools of thought I just gave, that it is the land of the brave, the land of the strong. Igodo means something strong. Just like when you have a warrior, it's called Igori. Igori in Benin means warrior. Igori means warrior. So Igodo means strong. Strong. Igodo. Igori. Igodomigodo. No, not Ubini. Mother Yekepolo is Ubini. The original word that our ancestors gave to this land long before the Ogiso era, even the Oba era, was Ubini. Ubini. Okay, might talk and fast, you want to go sleep. Make I talk and slow now. If you sleep, you come back, come watch the video now. Yeah? Might talk and small so that people will understand. So, do we understand? So, the word Ubini existed long even before the Ogiso era. Alright? And it has nothing to do with Ile Ibinu. Alright? Now, at the time this land was called Ubini before it was called Igodomigodo. At one point in time, it moved from being called Igodomigodo to be called Ubini. At the time the Portuguese came, the first people the Portuguese met were the Shekiris, and the Shekiris called us Ubini. Alright? If the Shekiris had met Urobo first, if the Portuguese had met Urobo first, probably they would have called us Akara or Akara, because the Urobos till date refer to us as Aka. So it was the people they meant first, who they seek for direction, that called, oh, you're going to the land of Ubini, and Benin, you know how it is. You guys used to watch Premiership now, when they used to call Odemigi, they say Odemwingi. Obviously, I'm just trying to play around, but the point is they could not pronounce Ubini and they call it Benin. Okay, so that's the point. So I like playing a lot. So they call it Benin. So that's how it came. So at one point in time, our land was called Ubini. Benin is now what is corrupted to call Benin. So It is not the Portuguese that named us Benin. It's a corrupted original word called Ubini. And Ubini originally was the word that was given to us by our earliest founders, the Efa, the direct sons of Paidu, Efa and Eme. He called us Ubini. And I have said that Ubini means a land of heavenly pageantry. It's an ancient Edo word, or ancient Aka word, or ancient Idu land word, or ancient Igodomigodo word that means a place of heavenly pageantry. Okay, a place of heavenly pageantry. Okay, I've explained that, Abi. Okay, I've explained that. So Igodomigodo as well, I've also explained that. So Ubini was a word that had existed long before the word Igodomigodo came. At one tail end, it was not called Igodomigodo. So eventually, the last word that was named after us was Edo. Edo, and I proved that Edo is not the name for the entire empire. It's like a capital. Edo is the capital of Ubini. I've said it. So the Obaiwa the first to pay what that slave Edo did, the sacrifices he made for him. All right, he now named the capital of his empire Edo. He did not name the land, the entire land Edo. He named the capital of the empire Edo. So the empire remains the original name, Ubinin Empire or Benin Empire. I've explained that. Why the capital of Benin Empire is Edo. That the seat of Oba is Edo. The seat, the administrative headquarter of the empire is Edo. Why the empire, it's Benin. So that's why may not be like say my foil won't finish. Anyway, I don't know what I say. I think I might still have foil. Okay, so having said that, I've been able to explain how the word Ubini came about and how the word Edo came about. Okay, Edo was a word. There was a slave, a boy that helped Prince Ogun because he was supposed to be killed. He was captured by the Ogefa and was put in the Ogefa's well. It was supposed to be caught by the Benin people, and eventually maybe they wanted to kill him. So it was the Edo that gave him a ladder into the well that Prince Ogun escaped with. Eventually, when he escaped, eventually at one long history, a mountain helped Prince Ogun to eventually become the Oba Obaiwa. So after he became the Obaiwa, to remember him, all right, he went to, the first thing he did, he the master of Edo killed Edo for having disobeyed him. So when he now became the Oba as Obaiwa the first, he went to exhumed the body of Edo